Hello Year 9, so today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at a quotation out of Act 2, Scene 1, and the quote is "Heat oppressed brain." So just get that down in the middle of your page. Okay, so now that you've done that, what I want you to do is write down your learning objective, which is, I'll just make sure you can see it. Oh, let me just get it into focus for you. Okay, so the learning objective is to explain what we can infer when Macbeth says "heat oppressed brain." Now these are the two vocabulary words you will have seen at the beginning of the lesson, which is manifestation and consequences. There is other vocabulary that you will have learnt throughout this term that you can also apply, which you will see me doing as we go, and I will have underlined this for you. Okay, so let's start to have a look. So first of all, if I come down here and I look at this part, I've put in regards to heat oppressed brain. So this is the quote that we're looking at that you should have now in the middle of your sheet. We're going to look at what this means, okay? So Macbeth, in this quotation, he questions if the visions of the dagger, so if we think about what's just happened, he's now decided and he's discussed it with Lady Macbeth that they are going to commit regicide and kill the king. But what happens is he starts to see a dagger. It's not in front, it's not actually in his hand. It's a part of his imagination, and it's a figment of his imagination that he sees this dagger floating. Okay, so Macbeth questions if the vision of the dagger is a manifestation, there you go, there's your word that you've used this lesson, from his guilt. So has it been caused, this vision, this hallucination, because of the guilt that he's feeling? Remember, this guilt, he's not done anything. All he's done is thought about killing the king, and it's having this much of an impact on him that he's already starting to hallucinate. So is that a significant giveaway that Macbeth is already on a downward spiral before he even kills the king, if he's already feeling guilty before he does it, which is making him have these hallucinations, these visions of a dagger that isn't actually there? And this vision that he's having and the heat, it's causing an intense physical reaction within his body internally. So it's like he's having a fever or an illness that's internally oppressing him. Okay, so it's causing him physical pain, and it's causing him to question what he's doing and what he's seeing again. So when you have a fever, sometimes when somebody has a fever and it's a very high fever, so hence the word heat, you can hallucinate, you can see things, and that's why we're comparing it to a fever or an illness, okay, that Macbeth is now feeling internally, and he's burning up. Macbeth is also aware he is an intensely and heightened emotional state, so he knows that he's already in an emotional state, and he's been discussing that with Lady Macbeth, because if we remember, he didn't really want to kill the king, and Lady Macbeth manipulated him and tried to persuade him to do it, and she said, I've planned this if you carry it out. And he didn't feel mentally strong enough to do it, because he has a loyalty with the king. All right, he was a noble, brave, valiant soldier, was Macbeth, but now he's having these thoughts and he's already feeling guilty, because Duncan is a noble king and he looks after his people. Okay, so he's feeling guilty before he does it. If we look at the word heat, and we're going to look at what the word heat could be a metaphor for. Okay, so if I move it up so you can see it. Okay, let's move it down a few. So heat, the word heat in our quotation back up here, okay, heat, if I move it down here so you can see it, it could be a metaphor for the obsessive thinking he has done over the murder. Okay, so he's obsessed continuously. He's not had no sleep. He's just, all he's thought about is the murder and gaining that kingship and fulfilling his ambition. So it's the heat, the obsessiveness that he's been thinking about. It could be part of that metaphor. It could be he feels like he's burning up, like a fever or an illness, like we've just said up here. So it's repeating what we've said. It's like an internal infection, like he's internally infected himself. The witches have planted that seed, and that has internally infected him. He's not externally showing it to everyone. The only person he's externally showing it to is Lady Macbeth. Again, another word here, external and internal, that you've learnt previously. So he feels like he's internally got an internal infection he can't fight off. And it's that seed of ambition, that want, that drive that he now can't fight off. And it's like he's got an infection of the body and the soul. And it's the witches that planted that. And remember what I said before, that the witches planted that seed of ambition, and then that flourished and developed even further when he was given the Fane of Cawdor, and then Lady Macbeth has continued to drive and help fuel that seed of ambition by manipulating him and questioning his masculinity before this Act 2 Scene 1. I suppose, like I've said a minute ago, this is the consequence of listening to the witch. So the consequence, okay, linking up to the top, the consequence of listening to the witches has led him into this state, this feeling like he's internally infected, and that his body and soul are now infected and he can't rid himself of it. And if you remember, the witches can torment people, okay? I've told you that witches can't kill people before. However, they can torment and torture people, and that is what they've already started doing to Macbeth by planting that seed of ambition. If we look further at what the word heat can symbolise, heat could also symbolise that Macbeth is internally consumed by flames of guilt. So he's already infurnace inside internally with this flame of guilt that is being ignited because of what he's thinking and how he's feeling towards his noble king who hasn't done anything wrong. So he's not killing somebody because he's sticking up for his king or his country. He's doing something that's wrong, and he knows that. So he's already in flames of guilt, even before he commits regicide, okay, which I've said here. It could also be an allusion to hellfire and suffering. So it could also be the fact that he's already suffering before he's done it. He feels like he's putting himself through all this pain and anguish before he's actually killed the king, okay? And he's feeling out of place, out of sorts with himself, because he knows he's going to be going against the divine right of kings, and he shouldn't be shouldn't be committing regicide because it's the utmost sin. So he knows that he's going to be punished for it and probably go to hell, alright, when he comes under the question of God. Then we're going to look now. I want you to just pause for a minute before we look at the next word. I want you to just get this information down in regards to the word heat, if I move it down for you. So I'll just pause the video there. Okay, now we're going to look at the word oppressed. Okay, so if we look at the word oppressed, it is an adjective, so we'll get these things down. And we can say that Macbeth is already suffering because of his guilt, and I've kept repeating this. That's what's causing this heat, this fever, this hallucination, this vision that he's seeing of this dagger right back up at the beginning, which I explained to you that he's seeing. This heat and this suffering is all caused because of the guilt that he's feeling before he kills the king, before he's actually done anything. Also, if we look at it, we can say that Macbeth is submissive to his ambition. He's given in to his ambition, because if he hadn't have given in to his ambition, he wouldn't be feeling guilty. So he's submissive to his ambition that has now become his tyrant. So his ambition is the tyrant. It's the dictator. It's the one that's leading him to do what he's doing. The fact that ambition is the tyrant because it's dictating what his next steps are going to be in terms of killing and committing regicide. So he's now become submissive to his ambition, and that has led him into this heat oppressed brain, okay, because he's now feeling like he's falling out a bit out of control, and he's hallucinating and not seeing things as clearly as he should be, and that's because his ambition is now his tyrant and it's dictating what he's done because he's become submissive. So just get them down. Okay, the next little bit we'll move on to is looking at all Macbeth's actions and choices became warped and volatile from this point. So all his actions that he carried out from this point, after he had this heat-oppressed brain, and he'd now become submissive to his ambition that now was his tyrant, everything became warped and it became volatile. His actions became volatile. Nobody knew what he was going to do because he was just acting on impulse and impulsively in order to keep whatever he could, keep his secrets and his lies at bay once he'd committed regicide. So everything became warped and volatile from this point because he is being controlled by his ambition that was fueled by the witches. So everything is being fueled by his ambition that has led him now to feel like his body is feeling like it's got an infection inside it, and his body and soul has become infected due to that seed that was planted right back at the beginning by the witches. So you can see now this quotation is showing Macbeth's guilt, okay, before he does anything, and how he feels infected, and that metaphor of that fever and him hallucinating and seeing things before they're actually there. Okay, so you've got all these words that you've learnt before. You've got the words ambition, volatile, tyrant, submissive, internally, consequence, physical, and manifestation. So remember when we've said at the beginning, Macbeth's visions of the dagger is a manifestation of his guilt. So it's the guilt that's causing this manifestation to appear here. Okay, I'll just leave it there at the bottom, if I can get it back on the screen for you, to get them bits down, them last little bits. And now you can go back to your teacher and write an analysis and do a post-learning quiz on this quotation.